Have you ever rolled into a strange town at midnight, exhausted, hungry, and desperately needing a bed, only to realize you just checked into a place that wasn't quite what you thought it was? Because let me tell you, I have. This is the story of my dumbest travel mistake. The night I confused a hotel, a motel, a lodge, and an inn all in the same trip. Sounds ridiculous, right? But trust me, when you're standing in a dimly lit parking lot, staring at a neon sign that says Budget Motor Lodge Inn Hotel, your brain starts doing gymnastics. Am I walking into a cozy countryside inn, a roadside motel, a five-star city hotel, or the set of a low-budget horror movie? I've missed flights before. I once fell asleep at JFK Airport, thinking I had 2 hours to spare, only to wake up to an empty gate and a boarding agent who looked at me like I had just ruined her week. I've also lost my passport in Barcelona. 6 hours of explaining to a Spanish policeman why I looked different without a beard. His only reply, "Senor, maybe grow it back." I even ordered raw goat meat in Mongolia once because I thought the word shavon meant beef. It did not. My stomach still hasn't forgiven me. But none of those compare to the humiliation that came when I realized I had absolutely no idea what separated a hotel, a motel, a lodge, and an inn. Now don't laugh too hard yet. Because I know, deep down, some of you are already as clueless as I was. Here's how bad it got. I was driving across Wyoming after a 7-hour road trip. My bladder was screaming, my stomach was growling, and then I saw it. A glowing neon sign rising like a beacon from the darkness. It said, Budget Mountain View Lodge Motel Inn, Hotel Suites. Every possible word crammed into one sign. I thought, wow, this place is like the Avengers of accommodation. They must have everything. Turns out, they had everything wrong. That trip became my crash course in the language of lodging. I stayed in each type, one after another. The overpriced hotel in Chicago. The noisy roadside motel in New Mexico. The syrup-scented inn in Vermont. And the lodge in the Rockies where a moose basically became my unwanted roommate. Each one left me with a scar, a story, and a very specific kind of trauma. So today I'm telling you the whole saga. And by the end, not only will you laugh at my stupidity, you'll also walk away knowing the true differences between these places, so you never mistake a raccoon party for a midnight spa treatment like I did. Oh yeah, that happened. Stick around. The hotel that robbed me with room service. It all started in Chicago. Big city. Big wallet mistake. I saw this glass skyscraper with spinning doors and a doorman who looked like he moonlighted as a Buckingham Palace guard. Yes, I thought. This is civilization. I walked into the lobby, buzzing like Times Square at midnight. Businessmen glued to laptops. Families dragging toddlers who were clearly plotting revenge against their parents. Tourists fumbling with maps like they'd just time-traveled from 1992. Hotels are built for this chaos. They're urban giants. Everything under one roof. Gym, pool, bar, overpriced gift shop selling toothpaste for $8. And let me tell you, when you've been on the road for weeks, it feels like heaven. Until you meet the real devil, room service. It was midnight. My stomach roared. I picked up the phone and whispered like I was doing something illegal. Can I get a sandwich? 30 minutes later, the sandwich arrived. Correction, half a sandwich. With a single lonely pickle. And a bill that looked like I had just sponsored an entire farm. That's when I learned lesson 1. Hotels will comfort you, but they will also rob you in broad daylight with a smile. And it wasn't just the food. The next morning I checked the bill and saw urban convenience fee, 15. What was that? A tax for breathing. A surcharge for existing. Later I learned hotels have been around for centuries. In France, the word hotel originally meant a grand townhouse for aristocrats. Which makes sense, because only an aristocrat could afford my midnight sandwich. Chicago gave me skyscraper luxury, but it also gave me a hole in my wallet. The motel where sleep was optional after Chicago, I thought, enough luxury. Let's keep it simple. I hit Route 66 somewhere in New Mexico and pulled into a roadside motel with a neon sign that buzzed like a mosquito. Motels, short for motor hotels, were born in the 1920s during the golden age of American road trips. 1 or 2 floors, rooms opening straight to the parking lot. Park your car, crash and leave. No fancy lobbies, no jazz trio by the bar. I checked in, unlocked the door, and immediately realized why motels are cheap. The walls were thin. So thin, I knew my neighbor's name, his breakfast choice and his ringtone. Without ever meeting him at 5 a.m., a Harley-Davidson roared to life right outside my door. I shot out of bed like I'd been drafted into a war. That was my alarm clock. Breakfast. A vending machine donut that tasted like it had survived Y2K. But here's the thing, motels are American icons. They're the backdrop of Hollywood road trip movies. They're freedom with a side of regret. Lesson 2. Motels are for quick stops, not beauty sleep. I drove off that morning half awake, half traumatized, and 100% fueled by stale coffee. The inn where I accidentally made friends for life. After motel chaos, I wanted charm. I wanted cozy. So I booked an inn in Vermont. I pulled up expecting a check-in desk. Instead, a woman in an apron smelling of maple syrup opened the door and said, "Welcome, honey. You're family now." And she wasn't kidding. Dinner was at a massive wooden table with strangers from Germany, Texas, and one guy from Toronto who gave Ushi's entire divorce story before I even touched my scrambled eggs. The next morning, I found myself in pajamas, sipping coffee with a retired couple who basically adopted me on the spot. This was no business. This was her home. Inns go back to medieval times when travelers needed warmth and a meal by the fire. That tradition hasn't changed. Lesson 3. Inns are cozy and personal. Perfect if you love community. Risky if you hate forced breakfast conversations. I left with a full stomach, 3 new friends, and way too much knowledge about a stranger's custody battle. The lodge where I slept with a moose. Finally, the wilderness. I wanted rustic. A lodge in the Colorado Rockies. I pictured log cabins, hot cocoa, maybe a ski fireplace scene from a postcard. What I got, a log cabin with a giant moose head staring directly at my bed. Nothing says sweet dreams like a taxidermy animal locking eyes with you. And nature wasn't shy. At midnight, raccoons threw a rave on my balcony. Mosquitoes performed synchronized attacks. The Wi-Fi was dead, but the wildlife was thriving. Historically, lodges were built for hunters and skiers. Translation: come here if you want to bond with nature. Don't come here if you want reliable internet. Lesson 4. Lodges give you nature, but nature doesn't care about your comfort. I left itchy, sleep-deprived, but very, very connected with the wilderness. The big mix-up, and then came the monster. Mountain View Budget Lodge Inn Motel Hotel Suites. All 4 words slapped together. I walked in and it was chaos. Neon lights like a motel. Moose head like a lodge. Family breakfast like an inn. And the bill of a hotel. It was Frankenstein's monster of hospitality. Lying in bed that night, I finally understood. Hotels were born in cities. Motels were born on highways. Inns were born in villages. Lodges were born in the wilderness. Each one has a history, a purpose. Mixing them all together is like calling sushi a cheeseburger. Technically food, spiritually wrong. So here's the summary of my humiliation. Hotels, comfort and service at a ransom price. Motels, convenient and cheap, but say goodbye to silence. Inns, cozy and personal, sometimes too personal. Lodges, rustic and natural, but prepare to wrestle with wildlife. And if you ever see a place that calls itself all 4, run! Or at least bring bug spray, earplugs and your own sandwich. So tell me, what's your dumbest travel mistake? Because if you've ever woken up to a moose watching you snore, I need to know I'm not the only one. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell, because clearly my trips aren't vacations. They're blooper reels. Until next time, travel smart, sleep well, and may Nora Kun ever DJ your balcony at 2 a.m.